Welcome to my weekly live stream. I'm Christine Weber. I love to share tips about yoga and support mature yoga teachers in their efforts to get yoga out there into the world. So thank you so much for being here and joining me for my live stream. I try and be here at 11 o'clock Eastern on Wednesdays. Last week I was hiking in Sedona last Wednesday. It's so beautiful. I'm like, because I can't believe I'm not there. But anyway, look where I am. It's gorgeous here too. I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm not complaining. Okay. Right. Grass is always greener, or the cactus is always more prickly. So today I want to talk about the goal of yoga because the reason I went out to Arizona was because I went to a conference, a yoga conference out there, which was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Um, and sometimes it's hard in the yoga world because there's a lot of opinions, of course. And if we all agreed on each other with each other, it wouldn't be that interesting. So of course we don't. But I do want to share some thoughts about the goal of yoga because one of the things I heard at the conference, and I've heard many times, is like, there is no goal. Yoga doesn't have, and the other one that I've heard a lot is yoga can be whatever you want it to be, which, I can't think of a sentence that reeks of cultural appropriation more than that. And I think we have to be very, very careful about cultural appropriation as if you are, and we, meaning us white people, and I'm assuming there are people here who are from South Asia, from other places, from certainly of African descent. Um, I think people in general who are not Indian, that's what I want to say, have to be very careful. And because it's a real thing, and really what you can look at, especially what was happening 10, 15 years ago in the Western yoga world with all of the people putting Ganesh on their yoga mat and on their t-shirts and, Om signs on your yoga mats or whatever, and then stepping on it and not having any clue about the culture that these practices came from or any respect for it. There's a pizza place where I live in Nashville that serves a beer called Shiva Lager. My husband boycotts it. We love their pizza. My husband's like, we can't go there. And he's talked to the owner several times, like, it's just offensive, And being conscious of that, I think, is really important. So some of the workshops I went to were, lovely movement practices, but then they get couched as yoga. And I think it's deeply problematic if you're not linking back to the tradition. I think it's deeply problematic. I've always taught that, by the way. I didn't just jump on the cultural appropriation bandwagon 3 years ago. I have been teaching that way since the beginning. And the reason I teach that way is because I studied with Indian yoga teachers in 1990, from 1992 to 95, and then in India in 95. I still have Indian yoga teachers today, but I was actually in India back in the day when I was really getting started on my yoga journey. And I remember coming to the United States, taking my first class. I had taken classes in the US before, but they were more hippie and, they were more like, traditional, I guess you could say, the yoga that I learned in India. And when I came back in 1995, I went to my first yoga class and I remember just feeling like I was completely out of place. I was like, what happened to yoga while I was gone? Because it was all sweaty and everything. At any rate, what I want to talk about today is if people say yoga has no goal or yoga can be anything it wants to be, let's not even talk about that in terms of cultural appropriation. Let's just go right to a good metaphor, which I think is soccer. My husband and I were talking about. My husband came up with this metaphor, so I'll share it with you. So he said, what if you said that soccer has no goal? And because there are so many people in the soccer world who have amazing footwork, like they can do all these incredible things with the ball, and they'll even have like exhibitions sometimes of people just doing cool stuff with the ball, But if you got out there with, I don't know, some famous soccer team or soccer players, and you were just like toodling around and doing cool things with the ball, Do you think that would go over well? Of course not, because soccer has a goal. Soccer has a goal, and in fact, the goal is called the goal. Is to put the ball in the goal. That's the that's the goal of soccer. It's clear. There is no question about it. And when people do fancy footwork and stuff, that's nice. It can be really useful. But if you just ignore your teammates and ignore what's going on in the goal of the game, you completely miss it. Let's apply that metaphor to yoga. I have absolutely loved studying with people and learning techniques of yoga that have been really helpful for me to get into my body, to make my body feel better, to help me learn how to breathe in more interesting, optimal ways, in ways that can improve my nervous system function. I love it. I love learning about the yamas and niyamas, the ethics of yoga. I love meditation practices. And the way that Patanjali set out yoga was that you have these four tools. You can call them process tools if you want to think about it from a psychotherapeutic perspective of ethical engagement, asanas, pranayama, and meditation. And they must be used in logical order that comes from 1.7 of the sutras that that you are meant to use your logic. These tools get used in logical order, not just a khichdi or a soup where you just sort of dump them all in and do whatever feels good in the morning. You use them, or in a class, you use them in a logical order in order to help you step by step learn more about yourself. So let's go back to the metaphor of soccer. You've got the person tootling around on the field. What does everybody think about that? What they think about it is ego. If somebody is hogging the ball all the time and showing off with it, they go ego, right? And they're like, you're not following the goal, you're not working together, you're not moving towards that goal, right? In yoga, we have similar things happening. All you have to do is put yoga into the search engine on Instagram and you'll see it everywhere. This is what my body can do. More power to you. Like, enjoy what your body does. Maybe it's okay to call it something else. Call it acrobatics. How is that different than Cirque du Soleil? How is it different than And again, even Cirque du Soleil has a goal, which is entertainment and to give you this magical experience. Beautiful, beautiful. Gymnastics has a goal. You're trying to win the competition with the beautiful, amazing things you can do with your body. Call it acrobatics, call it gymnastics, like call it whatever you want. But unless you have that clear logical progression, you are missing the goal of yoga, which is, you could say union, but I think there's lots of other ways to describe it. It's integration, it's self-understanding, it's deepening a sense of identity, deepening your sense of meaning and purpose, moving towards what it means to be human. And what it means to be human is to link your consciousness to that cosmic consciousness. Samyoga, Ityuko, Jivatma, Paratmana, to link yourself to that cosmic oneness, to realize who you really are beyond this tiny ego and this tiny, sense of mine and ownership, all of that, all of that starts to become less. It's important because we need it to get by in the world, but we start to see it as less important than this linking to that cosmic consciousness, that linking to this oneness. So we replace the ego and replace that egoic striving with surrender, letting go, devotional feelings, bhakti, connection, and feeling a part of oneness, right? One of the things that happens in the yoga world is without that bigger worldview, without that bigger picture of what yoga is about, is that the ego gets fed. We start to feed the ego with the physical accomplishments. And that is problematic for many reasons. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow and not be able to do those physical things, or have a chronic illness or something, right? We conflate the body with the mind and spirit. But yoga has a clear causal pathway. There is a clear Vedic precedent for who you are as a human being, for the ontology of who you are as a human being. It is laid out in the text, right? The agama, the text of yoga, it's laid out. And that causal pathway says there are three bodies or shariras. The karana, which is the causal pathway that leads to the shukshma, the subtle body or the mind, which leads to the stula, the physical. And the goal of the practice is to fold it back up. So you leverage the body and leverage the mind, springboard from the mind to the spirit. Spirituality is the goal of yoga. This is not something that's my opinion. This is clearly laid out in the yoga texts. It's clearly laid out. And I think a lot of times what we do in the yoga world is forget it or not bother studying it or decide that we know better. And it's really unfortunate. And it really is it's not only a matter of cultural appropriation. You know, people talk about cultural appropriation in yoga all the time, but I don't think they get to the heart of it. And the heart of it is that you disenfranchise yourself, others, your students, from the most important technology that has ever been available to human beings, from the most important potential for folks to be able to access. You know, these practices are there for all of humanity. And with everything that we are dealing with, I'm sorry for getting emotional, with everything that we're dealing with as human beings, with climate change, with wars, with everything that's going on, economic problems, the oligarchs, controlling things and people suffering so much with everything that we're suffering from. What we need as human beings is to get on the soccer team. We need to get on the team. We need to be on the team and work together towards the potential of what we can be. There's a tremendous potential for us to transform ourselves. And it's not navel gazing, and it's not about you as an individual. It's about all of us together and what we can become and what we can leave for our children and our grandchildren. So my hope is that as you come to your mat, when you go to your practice, that you take with you this idea that my practice is here and I'm so fortunate to have access to these practices. And I can take these practices to their logical progression, which is a deeper understanding of myself, so that I can show up for the world as my best self, as my highest self, and contribute in whatever way I can to diminishing the suffering. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Take care.